What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
Welcome back to Limelight Highlight, your silver lining space to take a break from the stressful everyday. As always, I'm your host, Jay Rose, and I hope everybody had a great weekend and an even better Halloween. My wife and I and the gang, the crew, we always roll with dressed up as The Purge. So if you follow me on Instagram, my regular Instagram, you see a bunch of Purge Halloween costumes. And then we had a nice cool event on Saturday with my job, dressing up as rednecks, to do a little scavenger hunt downtown. Ton of fun. I had a great time. So yeah, that's how my weekend went. I hope you guys had a great, safe weekend. Got a lot of candy. If you have kids, I hope you guys took a lot of pictures. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. But not much for upcoming events, so stay tuned for more news on that next week. But this week, we got two special guests, Nait and Juan. Now, I met Nait during a volunteer event through Act of Valor, and where I heard he had his own podcast. And I met Juan when I got the opportunity and invited to be on their podcast, Triple B Adventures. We talked about my experiences growing up in Philly on that podcast and getting into the military and transitioning out back into the civilian sector. So be sure to check that out after you listen to this. Once again, that is Triple B Adventures podcast. I don't have much news, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time. So yeah, welcome Nait and Juan to the podcast. Enjoy the show, guys. Well, I am here with Nait and Juan.
Hey.
I talked about you guys a little bit on the intro, but I'll give you guys the floor to introduce yourself a little more in detail. So, Nait.
All right. So I'm Nait Shermer. I'm a co-host and creator of Triple B Adventures podcast, as well as FUBAR podcast. And the FUBAR podcast is, for those that don't know, it's an acronym for F'd Up Beyond All Repair. And the Triple B Adventures podcast is a veteran podcast where we talk about, where the veterans grew up and how getting outdoors played a role in their life, and then their military service, and then their transition out into the civilian sector. And I'm also a mentor with Act of Valor, and as well as you are.
Yeah, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
First time.
Yeah, so we mentor Gold Star kids, which are kids that their fathers passed away either from PTSD related suicide or while serving in combat.
Right.
Yeah. And then I recently became a realtor. I'm a licensed realtor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
My childhood best friend was a realtor. He is a realtor in Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. So yeah, I started with, I'm working with Tip of the Spear real estate team powered by Keller Williams Realty.
Nice.
And our niche is getting veterans into the home of their dreams. So I'm really excited to be working with them.
Sweet.
Right on.
And then we have Juan.
I have the counterpart to the TBA podcast. So I do the TBA podcast with Nait, like he said, and then I'm the director of development for that organization, Triple B Adventures. So I try to oversee our events, our campouts, bringing more people into the organization to participate. And then I also do events as a freelance event coordinator. So I do the San Diego Mac and Cheese Fest. I did a high school Master Chef culinary competition a few years ago.
That's cool.
The Irreverent Warriors Silkies hike that just happened recently. And yeah, just anywhere where I get to bring people together for a cause.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get involved into being the counterpart to this podcast, Triple B Adventures?
That's a good one. How did we start wanting to do I think we started wanting to do it with TBA, but who wanted to start it?
So
TBA is
Triple B Adventures. So
right.
the B is kind of interchangeable for anything that's
Yeah.
badass.
Okay.
Bonfires, brotherhood, bullets. A lot of the things that we do can be described with a B. So
yeah, so I got involved with Triple B Adventures almost 2 years ago, and through friends of friends in the veteran sphere, one of the lead guys posted that they wanted some help with marketing and social media, and that's what I was going to school for was marketing. So I said, hey, I want to help. So I came on board, and actually I met the founder, Brady Pasola. I met him at a brewery, of all places. He's a Marine, so that's kind of goes hand in hand. Well, we met at the brewery, and we met, and we both realized we're from the Midwest, and we had so much in common. And then he invited me to a camp out. And while I was at that camp out, I met I didn't even know at the time, but all the leadership and a bunch of the people that played a big role in Triple B Adventures were there. He says, hey, what do you think of all these people? I said, yeah, they're awesome. He says, well, that's the board and everybody that's involved. He says, they all want you to be a part of this organization too. So I said, cool. I started doing the camp outs, and through bonfires and stuff, that's how I met Juan. And I felt like Juan and I had an instant connection. And it was shortly after that, Brady and I were talking. I think we were just talking about like the Joe Rogan podcast and the Drinking Bros podcast, and we're like, oh man, that'd be something fun to do. And Brady's like, if we can get the equipment together, I'll be a co-host. And so I just went on Amazon and got the equipment within like 2 hours. I'm like, I got the equipment.
You were telling me this stuff.
Yeah, I'm like, I got the equipment, and he's like, what? Already? I'm like, yep. So like the next day we started the podcast, and then Brady's really, really busy. He's all over doing executive protection, so he couldn't host it anymore with us. And then Juan stepped up, and Juan is almost taken over for the most part. He does like all the talking, and I do all the editing. So it's a great relationship.
Nice.
I like this time. I'm just gonna let you do the talking. No.
I know it's always opposite.
And it's worked out ever since. Like I think, like Nate said, we hit it off really well, and we have a good energy when it comes to having a guest on. We both have our fair share of questions, so if there's ever a quiet spot, we kind of read each other and know who will take over.
One of the hardest things I find when I talk to somebody, especially if they're being a little more difficult to have a conversation with, almost like pulling teeth, is
Right.
that awkward silence and trying not to have that linger too long on the podcast, because you can feel it through the headphones when you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, because of that, it really helps having a co-host or two. Personally, I like having 4 people on, 1 or 2 guests, and then 1 or 2 co-hosts.
Sorry about that. Just doing it again. We've had that problem happen multiple times on this podcast. But so you said you like having about 4 people on?
Yeah, 4 is the prime number for me.
Okay.
Yeah, especially we have another co-host that comes on periodically, Justin Allen, and he's fun to have on because he's kind of like comic relief.
Yeah.
And he's very well rounded in so many aspects in life. Yeah, it's nice to have the different point of views, and then you get them all together with a guest, and it's like magic to me.
We also get to rotate sometimes co-host with some of the other board members from TBA. So Jamie, she's our volunteer coordinator. She's starting to come on and do some of the episodes, and Todd has done a few. We're still kind of hashing out the schedule to get everybody, knowing which Monday of the month they're going to be on. But it's nice. It's nice having the podcast where the other board members support it too.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I find sometimes being hard when you have more people on at once is sometimes people like to, granted, you have to have that ideal group of people that you can be okay with not talking over each other, because everybody's, some people want to be heard more than others. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get that for sure. So how did you get involved in being a coordinator for stuff like the Mac and Cheese Festival and all those things?
I volunteered and then I didn't stop. It just happened. It started, I think with event coordinating altogether, it started at Mesa College. They're really good with their veterans program, with letting their veterans kind of take charge of programs and initiatives that they want to do. We were able to secure our own student veteran organization room. So we were one of the few clubs on campus that had our own room. And then they had a fundraiser. It was a Fall Fest 5K race. And I didn't even know that I was kind of event coordinating it. I was just getting tasked by one of the, she was like one of the assistant secretaries that oversaw the programs at Mesa College. And then at the end of it, I was like I kind of did a lot of that, like the spreadsheet, the system, the way this all worked out.
You did all the work.
Yeah, like nobody told me, but hey, you just kind of coordinated an event. And after that, when I took a few steps back, and I was like, wow, well, this is kind of fun. And then later on at Mesa College, somebody else had come in as a contractor to do a fundraiser for the school, and it was a pizza and beer festival. And then I asked to volunteer. I found out that he also does the San Diego Mac and Cheese Festival. And I volunteered for that too. And then I started kind of honing my skills into knowing what's the process of creating an event. Where do you start from ideation to, your ticket sales? And then I started doing that instead of what I was going to school for.
Nice. And what were you going to school for?
At Mesa College, it was for psychology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big change.
They kind of play into each other because psychology, a lot of the things you can see translated into, like psychology of sales, trying to design an experience for somebody. So what do you want to do to either trigger, or maybe trigger is the wrong word there, I guess, but to entice their memory and senses so they have a great experience at an event. So it kind of ties in a little.
Okay. Nice. Honing some skills.
Yeah, just no priming, like no Pavlov stuff, but...
And you started with, or how did you get in contact with TBA?
So, to make a short story long, I've been ever since I was transitioning out of the military. I've been kind of following and trying to support as many veteran-run businesses and organizations, and so I initially started. I helped back a movie called Range 15. It's by the guys from the Drinking Bros community. Article 15.
Okay.
And so I helped fund that. And then from that, I think it was Vet TV. I helped fund Vet TV too. And I met some of the founders from Vet TV. I met, at the time, I think he was COO, Daniel Kuhn. And I was going to college. And I'm like, hey, man, can I interview you? Can I do an informational interview with you for college? He said, yeah. And so we met up and did an interview, and he really liked me, and then we became friends on Facebook because of that. And then he introduced me to Brady and the rest of the crew.
So you got into networking pretty quickly when it came to that world, I guess you can say, right?
Yeah, and just like Juan, a lot of it was volunteering as well. And actually, in true military style, a lot of it was being voluntold. It was funny. So I was going to Southwestern College, and I'm in the Veteran Center, and I'm asking for help with I think some algebra or something. This guy's coming over, he helps me, and he's like, "Hey, man," just out of the blue, he's like, "Do you like sailing? Do you like the water?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." He's like, "Hey, come down. I've got a boat, and we're gonna go sailing. We go sailing on Wednesdays from like 5 to 7." So I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." So I go down there, and then as soon as I get down there, he says, "Yeah, we're actually on the race committee, and you're not just going to be on the water; you're going to be helping." I'm like, "Okay," so I'll just voluntold.
They
for
honey
this.
dicked you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I got on the water, and even though I was working, it was so much fun, and there was free beer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, free beer, free food, and then at the end of the night, he's like, "You are now on the race committee. Every Wednesday, be here at 5. I'm like, "Okay."
That's
Done.
a pretty serious commitment.
Done.
That's pretty cool though, because, you guys know the premise of this podcast is people doing positive things, and just you guys telling me you just volunteer, helping out with a bunch of different events. Maybe not all of them are directly for certain causes, but the fact that they're bringing joy to a lot of people is just positive in itself, and I think that's super commendable. I need to get more involved with you guys because I tried looking at a bunch of different what is the word I'm looking for? Volunteer events, because I want to be more involved in certain things, but a lot of them is like, you got to attend this class and get their certificate, and it's like jumping through hoops, and my time isn't my time is limited, but it's also